But when you get right down to it and you tell someone, yeah, I just ran 100 miles, most people have no idea that a human could do this. I mean,
Yeah.
they look at you with their eyes. Why the whole, you like, holy, you ran 100 miles? Like, where were the hotels along the way or the
Yeah.
campgrounds? They just can't imagine a human can do this. And it was the same reaction I had when I heard about someone running 100 miles. I thought there had to be trickery, like they hit a bike, bicycle in the bushes, or they got on a
Mm.
horse or something.
Yeah.
So I still think that, while ultramarathoning has become more mainstream, it's still not that mainstream.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's
Hello.
nothing. I'm always
Hello,
thankful
guys. For some
something.
of
Don't
us,
take
it's
for
quite
granted.
late
Say
in the
I'm
evening. For some others, it's quite early in the day. We have a really special guest with us today. I'm very excited and very happy that he had time to talk to us. I'm going to do a little introduction because you're going to get to know him a little bit more. With us today is Dean Karnazes. And some people call him a superhuman. He was called by the Times Magazine one of the top 100 most influential people in the world. He'd been running in a lot of different conditions, including 40 negative degrees Celsius, which is insane, and also on the Sahara Desert. And all the other crazy things he done in his life. We're gonna dive deeper into it in our conversation. Hello, Dean. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me run by. I'm well. How are you guys today?
Pretty well. It's a pleasure to have
I'm
you
good.
here. Before the conversation starts, I would like to thank you because, since long time, I'm starting running since I've been reading your books. I must admit, you're a great inspirer. I'm trying to do 10 kilometers per day, but it's hard. But yeah, at least you inspired me to do so. So thank you.
Dean, did you go running today as well? Is that a part of your daily routine, or today is a rest day?
No, I don't take rest days, so I have to train my body every day. So I did run today. Yes.
That's good. Maybe that's why you have so much energy. We can feel it through the camera that you are beaming with positive energy. Like that's
Mm.
a recipe for happiness. That's great.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I think so much of our overall happiness has to do with physical happiness. So if we treat our bodies well and we have, a good relationship with our body, I think that's the foundation of a happy life.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely can tell when I'm not doing much during the day that I'm very sluggish, but when I'm more active, everything just seems more optimistic and I have way more energy. So definitely I can agree with that. I also heard in one of the interviews that you prefer to stand, right? Like you're not sitting much during the day.
Can you tell even right now I'm standing?
Yeah, I can tell you're standing, but that's good. I'm usually standing too, but today I'm sitting. But yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, for those of you guys who listen to this episode that don't know this story, could you please tell us how did you start running? Like, how does your adventure with running started?
Well, I used to run when I was a young boy. So I used to run home from school, and I loved to run cross country when I was in high school. And then I decided that running was boring, that I had other
Mm.
things to do with my time. So I stopped running when I was 15. And then I went through university, and then I went through business school, and I had a very comfortable job in San Francisco. And on the night of my 30th birthday, I was in a bar, a nightclub with my buddies,
Mm.
drinking to celebrate my 30th birthday. And at midnight, I told them that I was going to leave. And they said, why are you leaving? Let's have some more tequila to celebrate your birthday. And I said, no, I'm going to run 30 miles to celebrate instead. And that's, it's about 50 kilometers.
Mhm.
And they looked at me and they said, but you're not a runner, because I wasn't a runner at the time. And I said, I know, but I'm still going to do it. So I walked out of this bar in San Francisco, and I knew there was a town called Half Moon Bay that was 30 miles south of San Francisco. So
Mhm.
I started running drunk into the night.
It's like a
And
midlife crisis, Dean.
I think very much so. Yeah, I
Okay.
think that I didn't like being a business guy. It's
Mhm.
nice having a lot of money and, stock options and a company car, but all those things, I think, were almost a prison. I felt like my life wasn't my own. And that night it kind of came to a head, and I just kind of ran away from the life I didn't like.
No, that's pretty poetic. Actually, I'm curious because you mentioned that you quit for 15 years, and I was reading your book. The impression that I had, maybe I'm wrong, but at some point, like you changed to track field running, right? And the coach for track field running, you didn't like him very much. I think he kind of disappointed you a little bit. Was that the main reason you kind of get bored with running, or didn't that anything that didn't have anything to do with that?
No, I think it had a lot to do with it. I mean, I was at an age, I was in my teenage years where you're very impressionable.
Mm,
And our cross country coach was a man I very much loved. He was very easygoing, and he
mm,
was he was almost like a mentor, like a sage. And he would just tell us to go run for as long as we felt. He said, run, do what's in your heart. If you feel like running for 2 hours, run for 2 hours. If you feel
mm,
like running for 15 minutes, then only run for 15 minutes. But he retired, and the track coach was very much different. He made us run around in circles on the track, and he would yell at us. And I didn't like that. I thought I prefer running on a trail in nature. I don't like running on a man-made track. And
mm.
I certainly don't like someone yelling at me
Yeah,
while
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying. I'm kind of, when I run, it's very spiritual to me. I'm with God. And the
Mm,
last thing I wanted was someone screaming at me. So
yeah.
I think that had a lot to do with it.
It's impressive because you have super gifted people like you. You're super gifted athletes, and then like the coaches that you have or the people surrounding you have such a big effect on someone like even about to quit the sport is amazing for me. Like, mm,
Did they know already when you were like in your teenage years, were your abilities like way like above the average guys at your age? Like did you know basically from the start that this is something you could be good at, or this or is it something you discovered when you were drunk running back home?
I think I noticed that I was different. I wasn't necessarily the fastest, but I never got tired. So I
Mhm.
remember we did a fundraiser, a charity run around the high school, and some of the really strong runners ran 10 laps around the high school, and I ran 105.
Wow.
And so I realized that I had, really good endurance. I wasn't the fastest, so I'll be honest. There was other guys that were faster than me, but I could go for longer.
you
That
have
must be
some
impressive.
you have some Greek blood in your veins, right? Because your parents are from Greece, right? And do you think that has anything to do with your passion for running? Like historically, like the first marathon was from Philip from Marathon to Athens, right?
That's exactly right. And I didn't know these things when I was younger, and I
Mm,
came to learn these things. And I feel like, part of my ancestry lives on within me. The ancient Greeks, they had a class of citizens that were called hemadromi, or just the Romi, which means long distance runner, day
mm,
long runner. And the responsibility of these runners was to run from different villages, different city states, to give information and to gather intelligence. They were foot heralds, messengers. And there's a famous race called the Spartathlon, an ultramarathon that goes from Athens to a place called Sparta in Greece. And it's 246 kilometers. So 2,500 years ago, this gentleman who ran the marathon, before he ran the marathon, he ran all the way to Sparta within 36 hours. So even 2,500 years ago, using, just regular dried dried meat like beef jerky,
Mm.
figs, olives, and just water. There was no sports drinks back then. Was able to complete a very difficult ultra marathon. So I think that something in my ancestry lives on within me.
Definitely.
Yeah, and you did the run, obviously, right? Was it like very like spiritual experience for you to be in Greece and run this race?
Very much so. Yeah, and to know the history, I think gave it deeper meaning, and to explore even marathon where the battle was held, and to run to Athens, to the Acropolis, knowing that such incredible history is in this area, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. I have to be honest; it's still very much rural trails. And I think a lot of people that run marathons don't know much about the history. And to me, that's tragic, because it has such a rich history. And, to be able to run a marathon or a half marathon, there's so much lore around that. And I think just to see it as a 21 or a 42 kilometer foot race, it does it a disservice.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because honestly, when I think about ultra marathons and marathons, first thing I imagine is just people that have like, they set up a challenge for themselves to run a marathon. They might prepare, but just want to take it off the list. That's it. Like, never going to run again, probably just want to do it. But I don't see it as like that many people know the history, as for example, or they assign any other deeper meaning or something. Maybe that would change their life to it. It's just clearly just a goal. But for you, it seems like it's way deeper, which I really like about your story, that you have so many, the background of it. You're also Greek. You clearly enjoy it, and you don't just run for running. You actually live through the run, and that's what I want to ask you about. Like when you run, and of course you reach certain time when it's just, I don't know how many hours you've been running. Like what happens with you, like with your body and with your brain? Because it must be draining after a few hours. Like what do you do? Like, do you think about something particularly, or?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the most spiritual runs are the really long distance running. So, where I'd run for maybe 1 or 2 days without sleep. And I think that there is a diminishment of self. So all of your ego is stripped away. You become somewhat defenseless, because your body is being pushed to its very limit. But you also become very strong in a certain way, because there's some deeper power that's moving you. So to me, I like doing these, 200 or 300 kilometer runs, because it's a way to really connect with your spirituality. And to me, it's, I find God when I'm out there doing these runs in so many different levels. I mean, for one, not many people even get up before sunrise and are outside all day. So think about, when was the last time you were outdoors and you watched the sunrise, you watched the whole cycle of the sun throughout the day, you watched the sunset, watch the moon rise, you'd watch the moon set, and then you saw the sunrise the next day out in nature. I love that. And most people have never even had that experience. And it's so fundamental to being human. I mean, it's where we came from, but we're so far removed from it now in modern society that I think it's unhealthy, and it makes us feel very isolated and detached from what we truly are.
Is there anything particularly?
I hope that makes sense. I know.
Yeah. No, it totally does.
Is there anything particular in your body from the physical point of view that has been found that, because you like reading your book, one of your books, The Confessions of an All-Night Runner, like I'm amazed at how you describe the struggle of the different endeavors you tackle. As to me, like, I don't think my body will be able to bear that. So I guess many people have asked you that question, but how do you do it? How do you overcome the pain, the unbearable pain of, I'm giving the mind the lead?
I think a lot of people ask me, what do I think about when I am ready to stop, where I'm at that point where it's so difficult. I feel like I can't keep going. And the problem is thinking. I try not to think, because when you think, it's overwhelming. You realize that you might have, hundreds of kilometers still left to go, and you might, feel the whole heaviness of it as a burden and a weight on your shoulders. To me, I just focus on taking my next footstep to the best of my ability. So I don't think about anything except taking my next footstep and my next footstep. So I try not to think about the future. I try not to reflect on the past. I try to be just in the here and now, the present moment of time. And it's rare that we spend much of our life in the present moment. Our minds are so active. I mean, even right now, as we're talking, you're thinking about a lot of things.
Yeah, true.
And when you're out there running in a really difficult situation, to think of nothing is really rejuvenating. When you come out of something like that, you feel like you've had a spiritual awakening. So I try my best not to think, and just to look at putting my next footstep in front of my last to the best of my ability.
But have you ever really feared for your life at some point, even though you kept going, or never?
I don't think I've ever really feared. I mean, I certainly know that I've pushed myself to the brink of collapse, and I have such trust in my body, and I've had, this sort of trust for so many decades that maybe I take it for granted, but I never compromise in my training. I always pay my dues. I never take shortcuts. I'm very disciplined in my actions, both with my diet, my training, my sleep, everything. So I put a lot of trust into my body. And I think that maybe that's why I don't get fearful. It's just because I realize that my body has done, supported me so well for so many years, and that I've taken care of it.
Is it fair to say that you have a personality like all or nothing, not only in the runs, but also in life? Is it fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think, our personalities are complex. So, I try to always be seeing the world through the eyes of a child. So always looking at things in a fresh way. And to me, exploration of the physical world is so important. So you guys probably know I've run on all 7 continents twice. And, probably the roughest period of my life was during COVID, where we couldn't travel. So that was tough. But I think that in analyzing someone's personality, I think you need to look at their outlook on life, what's important to them, what do they value, and so forth.
No, that's very true. When I read and saw videos when you were talking about both running in the South Pole when it's really, really cold, and also running on the desert, and all the stories about that the soles of the shoes can melt, and on the contrary, that it's so cold that you can't just breathe the air. Is it equally hard to run when it's very cold and very hot, or was one way worse than the other?
Personally, I hate the cold.
Yeah.
Certainly running across Death Valley, where the temperature was over 50, it was about 55 degrees Celsius. That's tough, but that it's going to become night and it'll get a little bit cooler. At the South Pole, I mean, if you wanted to brush your teeth, you had to sleep with your toothpaste, in your mummy bag just to warm up. Everything was frozen. So if you wanted to do anything, you had to keep it in your sleeping bag to warm it up enough. And that to me it's claustrophobic. I mean, and also running, to the South Pole, I had to have a balaclava over my head and goggles on over my eyes, and a neoprene muffler in front of my face, because you can't even breathe in that super chilled air. It'll freeze your trachea in your lungs. So it was almost like running in scuba gear. I mean, all I heard while I was running was
no.
And that was tough. Yeah.
The shoes that you used to run in the snow are normal running shoes, or do they have any special characteristic?
I had the shoes made that were one size too big.
Mhm.
So I had them custom made by a company called Gore-Tex. So the material is waterproof, but I
Mhm.
had them made extra large because I took some of those heat pads, you know, they call
Mhm.
them shake and bake, where you just expose them to air and they get warm. So I
Yeah.
took 3 of those and I put them under the foot soles
Mhm.
in the shoes to try to keep some heat, so my feet wouldn't get frostbite.
Mhm.
Did that work? Or
It my feet got very cold at the end. The problem was, like, I couldn't stop. I needed to put in some new ones because
Mhm.
they started
Mhm.
losing their heat. But once you stop, you get into a lot of trouble. And the other thing is, you couldn't take off. It was really hard to tie my shoelaces because you couldn't take off your gloves because your
Mhm.
hands would get frostbite.
Wow. And I was using those packs when it was -15 because I was cold walking normally. So I'm really impressed. Is there any race that you're particularly proud about, or any run? It doesn't have to be a race necessarily.
I mean, the most memorable run of my life actually was a 10-kilometer run. And you
Mm.
might wonder, why such a short run. I ran a 10-kilometer race with my daughter Alexandria on her 10th birthday. So
Uh,
that was, to me, kind of the pinnacle experience. Yeah.
are they into
that's amazing.
running also? Your children?
She's running. She's older now,
Okay.
and she doesn't do a lot of races. We've run a half marathon together,
Mhm.
but she just likes to run just to clear her mind and to be in nature.
And your children have grown up seeing you running and going to different places. They've even accompanied you with your parents, as far as I know. And how have they lived that their father was, running in so different places, and it was a great experience for them, or
Yeah, I think they don't know me as anything other than who I am.
uh-huh.
So I think it's more when their friends make a comment like, "Oh my God, your dad's incredible," he's crazy, or your dad's superhuman. I think then they realize. But my kids have always known me as an ultra marathoner, and I think that they've been a part of the adventure. We talked earlier about one time I ran 50 marathons in all of the 50 United States in
Mhm.
50 days. And they came along with me. So, and, my son was 9 and my daughter was 11 at the time.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of people that have been to all of the 50 United States, even adults, and here they, before they were even teenagers, had seen
That's
all
true.
of America. So we've all had some great adventures together.
Cool. In order to perform all of these grandiose achievements, like I imagine there's a lot of training behind the scenes and a lot of sacrifices. What are the main sacrifices in your life that you have to do in order to achieve this?
One uh, is that especially when my kids were younger, I really sacrificed a lot of sleep because I wanted to put my
Mm.
family first. So
Mhm.
I would get up real early in the morning at 3 in the morning, and I would train before work. So I was certainly getting only 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night consistently, and that was, I don't think, so healthy. But it was a sacrifice I had to make. I couldn't figure out how else to fit it all in. Other than that, my life probably would have been easier had I remained a businessman.
Mhm.
I mean, even now, I'm still making a living as an athlete,
Mhm.
which is kind of crazy given that, I'm no longer a young man.
How old are you, if
And
I can ask?
well, I'm old. I just turned 60. Yeah, I just turned
Okay.
60.
Well, you look
Yeah, I
super
don't
young.
feel like it. I feel like I'm a
No,
kid
you look
still.
you look
Yeah.
super young. I wish I look like that when I'm 60. Jesus Christ.
Just start running.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why
just
I'm
start running.
started running. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Was there any moment, well, besides when you were a teenager, when you quit running, did you have any other episode in your life when you just wanted to stop running, or it's just your love of your life, and you never had this thought of quitting?
It's always been a passion of mine. And I mean, to me, running is a very diverse sport. A lot of people, when they think of running, they think of, just going to a track, right? And running around a track. Or they might think of, their daily run where they might run, 5 kilometers or even 10 kilometers around their neighborhood, or they might run on the treadmill at the gym. But if you knew what running means to me, it's more like, I run in the wilderness for sometimes a couple days by myself. So to me, running is more about adventure. And there's certainly, days where I just go out running just to train because I have to, keep up my level of training. And that's more just like, I'll listen to an audiobook. I love listening to audiobooks, and I'll just go kind of do a run. But mostly my runs are in nature and in very unique locations. So it transcends running in a lot of ways. It's a lot more about exploration.
Yeah. Is it quite common when you are a lot in the nature that you meet like different animals? Or because I assume that you don't see many people, right? Especially when the run is quite long, and probably at the beginning is some people and then later maybe a bit less. For me, it sounds a little bit scary that during the night running somewhere in the wilderness, and it could be potentially some wild animals like hiding everywhere. Did you ever had a weird situation with some animals, or is it usually quite like chill and relaxing? Everything is fine.
No, I mean, I've had encounters. I've seen bears while I've been running, which those terrify me. I've seen a lot of snakes, rattlesnakes. Recently, I had an encounter with a coyote, and coyotes are usually, the area I live, there's lots of coyotes, and I've been running with coyotes, for many, many years. I see them all the time, but this one, I was carrying food, and it was 2 a.m. So I think the coyote tried to get the food, and I was in the way.
Oh no.
But I don't worry about it. What concerns me the most actually is dogs, domestic dogs. And most dogs are friendly, but the dogs can be very territorial. So, the times I've been attacked the most have been just by dogs, regular domestic dogs.
Yeah, that can be quite scary. But I'm very impressed anyways. You're able to have this long runs and keep calm even when you see snakes and all the other creatures everywhere. What has been, because you did so many different things, like you challenge yourself every day. But do you think like after you started running and having all of these crazy challenges, did it affect your like other parts of your life as well? Like, do you feel the same sort of resistance, like mental resistance in real life when you do other things as well?
I think the lessons from running in general carry over to life. I think a runner knows, what it feels like to experience pain. I think most people try to avoid pain, right? I mean, if you look, at least on American TV and television, half the commercial advertisements are for pharmaceuticals that, relieve pain. Stop your pain, take this pill. Where we runners, we kind of embrace pain. We know we're going to encounter pain, and that pain is part of the almost enjoyment of the run, that we can overcome it. And that once you experience pain, when you move beyond the pain, life is just that much grander. So I think that, there's a saying, embrace the suck. When you do an ultra marathon, you just, it's going to suck. There's going to be a point where you're just miserable. And instead of saying this is horrible, all I want to do is stop, I say to myself, wow, this is glorious. It's so miserable. I can't remember being this miserable before, or I can't remember being in this much pain before. This is really great.
I love that attitude.
Was the Western 100 race the turning point in your career? The moment when you realized, well, I can do this and even better. Was that the turning point?
I think for me, it was. And I'll never forget at the start of the race, when the race director was kind of giving us our cheer before we left, he said that, he said, look around at your other competitors. He said, many of you, you're not going to reach the finish line. You just won't make it. And he said, those of you that do reach the finish line, the experience along the way will change who you are. You'll cross the finish line as a different person than the one that's standing here right now. And I thought about those words, and, after I reached the finish line, I realized how true they were. I learned so much about myself in that 24 hours that I hadn't known before. Again, looking at my Greek roots, the oracle at Delphi said, the premise of being human is know thyself. How do you get to know thyself if you're always comfortable? You don't. So once you get out of your comfort zone, once you push yourself to the very brink of exhaustion, even beyond that, you see who you really are. And that race taught me who I really was.
When you finish a race, when you cross the finish line, who are the person or people that cross your mind first, if any?
Well, again, this is, it's almost spiritual, but I had a younger sister who was very close. We were very close. She was my best friend, and we did everything together. And unfortunately, she died on her 18th birthday in a car accident, and I was 21 at the time. And I was very devastated, as you can imagine, by her loss. I went through all the cycles of bereavement. I was angry, then I was in denial, and then I was in very destructive mode where, I was abusing alcohol just to numb the pain. And the first person I thought of when I crossed the finish line was my sister, because I feel like she's been with me, living these experiences with me, since I came to that moment of reckoning where I just thought, you can't keep destroying yourself. That's not doing her justice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's sweet that she pushes you through, for sure.
Yeah, and it's quite mature as well to push through the pain. And I think I watched one interview and you were saying that you also have like conversations with her when you run, like you think about her and you like keep her alive in your head and, kind of have this connection. I find it really, I find it really beautiful that you have this memory and also this relationship that you're harvesting still.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was we all know people that have this whimsical spirituality about them, that you can't really define. But she, even though, she died when she was 18, she was like Buddha. She was so she had such a free spirit. And, to keep that spirit alive is a duty of mine. And it brings me a lot of happiness and joy.
That's really great. Do you think that anyone can run an ultramarathon, or are there certain people that I'm not trying to run an ultramarathon, but I'm just wondering if in your opinion, if it's possible for everyone to achieve such a goal, or there are certain constraints besides the obvious ones, if you may be very sick and stuff like that?
No, I very much believe that anyone can run an ultramarathon. I think that most of running an ultramarathon is done with your head. I mean, I do a lot of ultramarathons all around the world, and sometimes at the start of these ultramarathons, you look at some of the other runners and they don't look that physically fit. They might not be the perfect physical specimen. And you kind of wonder, how's this person going to, run 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers? But they do. And I think it's all in their attitude. It's all in their mind. Yeah.
Talking about physical fitness, like you look ripped, or at least from the past times. And is it something that has benefited you to look that ripped when running, or is something that is not that helping? being so muscled and everything?
I do a lot of cross training just to keep my muscle bulk because, as you get older, you lose muscle.
Yeah.
So having muscle is not necessarily good for running. If you look at a lot of the really fast runners, they're very, very slender, very skinny. But I don't think that's healthy for longevity. I think that might help you, win races for a number of years, but I think that ultimately it's not a good thing, and you're going to suffer injuries and other things. So I've looked at being a runner as something for life, and I've always looked at longevity as something that I wanted to optimize. So I put a lot of effort into cross training so that I'm not losing muscle mass as I get older.
And what kind of workout do you follow? Like, what could be a normal day for you workout?
I primarily use body weight, but I have this HIIT training, high intensity interval training routine that is push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, chair dips, and burpees.
Like a huge amount, right? I imagine.
Yeah, it's about a 12 to 15 minute routine again, and it's very intense. My heart rate gets up to about 90% of my max, and I do that 4 or 5 times throughout the day. So I don't just do like one hour workout. I do these micro workouts continuously throughout the day.
What about dieting? Do you follow any special alternative dieting? Like, right now it's trendy to do intermittent fasting or things like that. Or do you follow a normal nutrition standard one?
No, I've been doing intermittent fasting for maybe 15 years.
Ooh.
So I practice that regularly. I also have cut all refined and processed foods out of my diet. So nothing that is put through a machine, I'll eat. So that means no pasta, no bread, no cereal. I like to say if I can't pick it from a tree or dig it from the earth or catch it with my hands, I won't eat it. So my diet's become very refined over the years.
Okay, no, I mean, it's doing a great job from what I can see. I can see. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, Pedro started also recently with intermittent fasting. I tried once and I gave up. It's just like, I think maybe I just didn't reach the point where my body got used to it enough. But yeah, I think it's very impressive, especially keeping the diet pretty refined. Because when I start thinking about food I eat, even though I think it's healthy, then I start thinking about what happened to it before, and I'm like, okay, maybe not. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I'm wondering, how is the community of like other ultramarathon runners? Would you say that's very like supportive? Like, do you have a lot of friends from the community?
I would say that more so than any other group that I've been associated with, ultramarathoners are very supportive. They're very encouraging, and I think there's a high level of empathy with other runners, because even if they're elite, that it's tough, that what they're doing is really, really difficult, and you cannot lack respect for someone that is running an ultramarathon, because yourself how much it requires of them to be able to do this. So I think we're kind of kindred spirits in that regard. And the ultramarathons they're still funky, they're still like the smaller ones, especially. Like, I mean, they're still, there's grandma shows up and the kids show up, and, they're making sandwiches, grilled cheese sandwiches on the side of the course. And, it's still got some grassroots elements to it that are endearing. And I just hope that never goes away, because, I've formed some of my closest friendships while I've been running with people.
Have you lost friends also because of this, or because, I don't know, because I imagine, like, when you tackle something that consumes a lot of time in your life, you tend to move away from other parts of your life. Has it been the case in your life?
I'm very much an introvert.
Hmm.
So I am comfortable by myself. I spend a lot of time on my own, and that suits me just fine. If you look at the things I do, I mean, writing is a very solo pursuit.
Hmm.
If you know any writers, especially novelists, you have to spend a lot of time in your own head.
Yeah.
And if your personality is extroverted and you like spending a lot of time with others in social situations, it doesn't marry up. So thankfully, the things that I've chosen to pursue, like writing and like running, are complementary with my nature as a person.
Yep. I always admire writers because I've tried so many times to finish a book that I was writing, and it's impossible for me because it's just I cannot find the willingness to finish it. And with writers, I really admire you guys because it's just like I don't know where you get the time and the willingness to finish things. Anyways,
But you're writing when you run, right?
I do a lot of writing when I run.
really?
Yes. And I think that you probably know you have some of your clearest thoughts when you're running. There's a saying, motion stirs emotion.
Mhm.
So I used to think that, wow, if I recorded some of these thoughts, they're nice and they're happening while you're actually running. So you're kind of capturing the moment in a really unique and authentic way. So I just carry a digital recorder and I just kind of dictate
I was
as
gonna
I'm
ask.
running.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Would
Well,
you think?
now I use my iPhone. I mean, it's a lot easier now because of with the earbuds and the iPhone.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Would you think about current coverage of ultramarathon in general, ultramarathon sports? Like, do you think is you have contributed to it a lot? Do you think it can be pushed forward more, or are you happy with the current coverage of the media?
I think that I've certainly popularized to some extent ultra marathoning,
Mm.
but I still don't think that most people know what an ultra marathon actually is. I mean, they might have heard like, oh, this person's an ultra marathoner, and that might mean to them, wow, they do something that's really grueling. It's might be intense, but when you get right down to it and you tell someone, yeah, I just ran 100 miles, most people have no idea that a human could do this. I mean,
Yeah.
they look at you with their eyes wide. You're like, hold it, you ran 100 miles. Like, where were the hotels along the way or the
Yeah.
campgrounds? They just can't imagine a human can do this. And it was the same reaction I had when I heard about someone running 100 miles. I thought there had to be trickery, like they hit a bike, bicycle in the bushes, or they got on a horse or something.
Yeah.
So I still think that, while ultra marathoning has become more mainstream, it's still not that mainstream.
Mm.
Mm.
Is ultra marathon everything that it's a longer run than a marathon is already an ultra marathon, or is there any threshold you need to reach for the run to be called ultra marathon?
No, I mean, it's kind of ubiquitous, but in Latin, ultra means beyond. So if you say beyond, ultra marathon is anything beyond a marathon. So a marathon, as you know, is 42.2 kilometers. Anything beyond that is an ultra marathon. But typical race distances are 50 kilometer. That's kind of like the shortest ultra marathon is 50 kilometer, and then there goes further than that. But you could run 43 kilometers and say I ran an ultra marathon because you ran beyond a marathon. Yeah.
Technically. In your case, you did 50 marathons, right? With 50 days and 50 states. How do you recover when you have no time for it?
I just think the human body is remarkable. So I don't know how I did it. I look back and I thought there were days when I couldn't even get out of bed in the morning, and I'm wondering how am I going to run a marathon? And somehow I just got to the starting line and started running and finished the marathon. So I think that, I think that with that particular endeavor, it wasn't just the running that was difficult, it was the travel. Because I think that, if I was just only running 42 kilometers a day and kind of stopping and starting where I stopped the day prior, it'd been a lot easier. But I'd run, a marathon, and then we'd get in a bus and I'd drive for 8 or 10 hours sometimes. And I think the travel was really grueling. The running was certainly difficult, but I think layering that on top of the travel really made that a challenge.
There is also another achievement that I found funny in reading your book that you have done is running naked around the globe, the South Pole, because you were running around the pole, right?
Yeah, well, I mean that is a funny story. There is a candy striped barber pole at the South Pole.
Yeah,
and yeah, as a joke, if you run around it, you're running around the world. So
Yeah.
that I could do maybe.
Let's run around the world naked. And,
All naked with minus
it
40
was very
degrees.
fast loop around the world. Yeah, it was very,
Yeah.
very
Oh
quick,
man. Sorry, Pedro, go on.
No, I was going to ask that in that run to the South Pole, like you mentioned at some point that you see everything white at some point. Is that the case? Like, how do you feel? Like, is it like you feel dizzy? You don't know where you are? You feel disoriented, or?
It's called Vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever been in a setting like that, it's incredibly disorienting. I remember we tried to do a training run, and one of the runners he just fell over because you can't tell what is up, what is down, what is left, what is right. All you see is just white, and it's very dangerous if you're a pilot. Like that's one of the main reasons small aircraft crash is because of vertigo. So you experience that quite a bit at the South Pole.
I'm pretty impressed by the stories and also the resistance that your body have, because when I think about it, I'll be the one falling after 2 meters straight away. Like my brain will be like, okay, we don't know what's upside down. No, that's really great. Is there, I still can't get over that you don't need to recover that much and you still keep going. Like, I read something in the article, but you have to confirm this if that's true. Is that some doctors detected that your body works a little bit different in a way that it can basically flush out the lactic acid in your system a bit earlier, so it doesn't accumulate in your muscles? Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, that's what their studies have shown. So I've been tested quite a bit, and yeah, that's, I don't like to emphasize that because I don't want people to think that, oh, this guy has like this magic power.
Yeah.
I could never do that. I don't want people to think that. I think that anyone can achieve similar magic powers if they work as hard as I do. So, I think that it's pretty well known that endurance athletes have this ability at some level to get rid of the lactic acid, which is that kind of burning sensation in your muscles. I might have a little bit of more of an ability beyond that, but I think that anyone that starts to train will get the same sort of ability.
Okay. Yeah, but I think you're totally right. Like, I don't think it's just comes down to some sort of how your genes are. I think when you're talking to you, it's very clear that first of all, you're very consistent. You have a great mindset about it. Plus, yeah, you actually train. So it doesn't come from like, okay, I got this magic power and off I go. Is there any lesson that you learned the hard way that you remember particularly that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the lesson is that that we regret the things we don't do worse than the things we do. So I think that I've learned it's much better to make a mistake trying than to not try and look back with regret. Like, I wish I would have tried this. So, to me, when I got into ultramarathoning, I did a 50-mile race, was my first ultramarathon. And at this race, at the finish, I was destroyed. I thought I was going to die. and I was in the medic tent, and I was, I had this Mylar, the Mylar blanket they put around you, and I was shivering, and my teeth were chattering, and I saw two other runners, and they were high-fiving each other, celebrating that they qualified. And I'm thinking, you qualified for what? The insane asylum? What did you qualify for? And they said, no, we qualified for the Western States 100-mile endurance run. You had to complete this 50-mile run within a certain time frame to qualify for the Western States. And I thought that's impossible. Like 50 miles almost killed me. I can't believe there even is a 100-mile race. Yeah. And the one guy looked at me and he said, buddy, you qualified as well. And when he said that, the shivers ran down my back. And I knew at that moment, I just knew that if I didn't try this 100-mile run, the rest of my life, I would look back at that day and say, you qualified and you never tried. So that was one lesson I learned, is I say my prayers every day that I actually tried that race. So to me, it's better to dare boldly and to fail than to not dare at all.
I really admire that. It's very good that you found out that you qualified. Thanks to those guys. Pedro, did you want to ask something?
I was going to say that's the same way I started the podcast, thanking you, because I've started running again, and reading the book inspired me again to start running a little. Has anyone ever told you something that they did because you inspired them, that you found, wow, this is amazing?
People say to me, I inspire them, but I don't know what it means to inspire someone. I don't aspire to inspire people. I mean, I get it. Yeah. I mean, even, like people say, like, what did you tell your kids? Like, how did you keep your kids disciplined? And I never disciplined my kids. I think that a true leader leads by example. So I just always put forth the best example, and I was the best me that I could be. And I figured that that's better than telling someone to try something. So to me, for me to say, hey, get up everyone and go run a marathon, that's one thing. But for me to go do it and someone to learn about, hey, there's this guy doing it. He ran 50 marathons. Maybe I can try one, or maybe I can try a half marathon. I think that makes me so gratified. It's so fulfilling for me when someone says to me, you changed my life, or you got me running, and I love it.
Yeah. As a reader, I have to say, like, the way you describe your emotion while you were running and struggling, I mean, they are inspiring, because it's like, okay, you feel like, okay, I'm going to get off the couch and start running, because, I want to prove my limits also too. And in that regard, I think that's very, very inspiring. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's something really motivating and comforting, the fact that you are a human as well. And a lot of it is just your hard work and, of course, your mindset. And as you said, like, I clearly don't get the impression that you're doing it for, like, to impress others. Like, it's very clearly doing it for yourself and push your own limits. And I think the attitude as well is something I find really admirable about you, and how pure you are about the running and this being your passion. I think you also infect others with the passion. So I don't think I'm a good runner, but for what I take away from this conversation is to pushing yourself and maybe having a little bit more like optimistic mindset about, like, you can actually do more than you think you can, which probably all of us can. So thank you for that. Can you tell us, I think we don't have that much time left, but could you tell us a little bit about what else is on your plate? Do you have any dream that you want to accomplish, or any goals that you want to accomplish in the near future?
Yeah, well, this race called the Badwater Ultramarathon, which we talked about across Death Valley, is from the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, which is called Badwater. And the highest point is 216 kilometers away from there. It's called Mount Whitney. So it's from the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere to the highest point in the contiguous US. And I've done that now 10 times. So my next goal is to run from the lowest point on Earth to the highest point on Earth. So you probably know the highest point on Earth.
Yeah.
But it's not a trick question. I mean, when I ask people like, what's the highest point on Earth? They think it's some sort of trickery, but it's Mount Everest. Mm-hmm. And so I'm planning on running from the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point, to the summit of Mount Everest, the highest point.
To the summit? To the top?
The very top. And I shouldn't say run, because I'll probably be hiking as I get up toward the top. But, running as far as I can and then hiking to the top.
What's the distance between the 2 points?
That's a tricky question.
Depends how you look at it, I guess, and which route you take, right?
Yes. And I'm working with the U.S. State Department and the UN, because the most direct route goes across Iraq and Iran. And right now, they're saying I can't run through. It's too dangerous to run through those countries. So then I'd have to go further up, like through Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, which would make it much, much further.
Okay, but you're gonna run alone, or are you planning to take some friends with you?
I'm hoping to do it with a friend of mine, Charlie Engel, another very seasoned ultramarathoner. And he's run all the way across the Sahara. So he's very experienced at doing these long distance runs, and we're hoping to do it as a team.
That's great. Fingers crossed. I'm very amazed, but I hope you can start running soon and everything goes smoothly. Very impressive. And thanks so much for the conversation. Pedro will be running tomorrow. I'll be supporting Pedro with his runs. And yeah, thanks a lot. It was really great to have you here. And I hope you're gonna accomplish all of your goals and have a great 2023, because it's already a new year now.
Well, thank you for having me on. And if you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, let me know and I'll take you running.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay, I need to get ready for this.
Then if you are ever in Spain, let us know. Yeah.
South of Spain also. But like 10K for me, or I can just run for you a little bit and then I'll leave you guys.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working